Let's be honest, most Bigfoot stories are frustrating. They're blurry blobs in the distance, crunching footsteps in the dark, or a spooky feeling on a camping trip. We usually get just enough information to be intrigued, but never enough to be convinced. However, every once in a while, a report comes along that is so detailed, so close up, and from a witness so credible that it forces you to stop and pay attention. Today, we're going back to 1955, up a mountain in British Columbia to relive an encounter. The witness wasn't hundreds of yards away. He was 20 feet. He had a rifle in his hand, and what he saw wasn't a monster, but something that changed his life forever. This is the story of William Roe. To understand why this story carries so much weight, you have to understand William Roe. 1955, Roe wasn't a weekend warrior looking for spooky stories. He was a lifelong resident of Alberta, an experienced outdoorsman. He spent his life hunting, trapping, and working on the highways in the wilderness. He knew bears. He knew moose. He knew what belonged in the woods, and he knew what didn't. In October of that year, Roe decided to climb Mica Mountain near Tetuanucash in British Columbia. He wanted to check out an old deserted mine he'd heard about. It was a solo trip. He had his supplies, and importantly, he had his rifle. The climb was rough. Roe finally emerged from a thick patch of brush near the timberline and sat down on a grassy slope to catch his breath. He was sitting quietly, just scanning the landscape. That's when he saw movement. About 70 yards down the slope, something was moving near a patch of bushes. At first, Roe's brain went to the most logical explanation: grizzly bear. It was dark brown and massive. Being an experienced hunter, Roe knew grizzlies were dangerous, so he carefully raised his rifle and looked through the sights, ready to defend himself if it charged. But as he watched through the scope, the bear did something impossible. It stood up. Not just rearing up on its hind legs, like bears sometimes do to check the scenery. It stood up and stayed up. Roe realized in that second that this wasn't a bear. It was a biped, a two-legged creature covered in dark silver-tipped hair walking towards him. Now here's the craziest part of the story. Roe was hidden by the brush he'd just crawled out of. The creature didn't know he was there, so for several agonizing long minutes, Roe just sat there, frozen, watching this thing get closer and closer until it was just 20 feet away. Because he was so close and because he was looking through a rifle scope, Roe gave us perhaps the most detailed biological description of a Sasquatch in history. This wasn't a blurry shape. He saw details. First, he estimated it was about 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. He guessed it weighed nearly 300 pounds. He said it had almost no neck. The head seemed to sit right on the massive shoulders. The face was dark, with a flat nose and protruding lips. The ears looked surprisingly human. The arms were incredibly thick and long, reaching almost down to its knees. But the most shocking detail, the one that makes Roe's story stand out from almost all others at that time, and that's key, was its gender. Roe stated clearly that the creature had visible breasts. He was looking at a female Sasquatch. He watched it eat. He watched it. It would grab branches with those long arms and strip the leaves off with its teeth. He said it moved with a strange kind of fluid flexibility, squatting down easily on its haunches. It was just living its life. So here's William Roe. He's 20 feet from an unknown species. He has a high-powered rifle leveled at its chest. He has the chance to end the mystery right here, to bring back undeniable proof. He later said the thought crossed his mind, should I shoot it? But as he looked at this creature through the scope, something stopped him. He said that despite the hair and the size, its face, its mannerisms, they were too human. In his own words, Roe said, "I felt that if I shot it, I would have never forgiven myself." Instead of pulling the trigger, he lowered the rifle. The movement caught the creature's eye. It froze. Roe said it didn't look angry. It looked amazed. It had just realized a human was sitting right there. It slowly stood up, backed away a few feet, and then turned to walk rapidly back toward the timber. As it left, it did something that would become ionic years later. Just before it disappeared into the trees, it turned its head over its massive shoulder to take one last look at. William Roe didn't run to the newspapers right away. In fact, he didn't tell the story publicly for 2 years, fearing people would think he was crazy. But when he finally did come forward in 1957, he did something wildly unusual for the time. He went to a lawyer and swore a legal affidavit, a sworn statement under penalty of perjury that every word of his story was true. Why does this matter so much today? Besides the incredible detail, many researchers point out that the creature Roe described, a heavyset female with a visible breast that looks back over its shoulder as it walks away, sounds almost identical to Patty, the subject of the famous or infamous Patterson-Gimlin film. But that film wouldn't be around for another 12 years. Did William Roe see a biological animal on that mountain in 1955? He certainly believed he did. And his refusal to pull the trigger gave us one of the most compelling mysteries in Bigfoot history. What do you think of William Roe's story? Does his detailed description make you more of a believer, or are you still skeptical? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into classic Bigfoot encounters, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. Keep your eyes open out there.